wishing you a joyous Easter celebration. Christos Voskos. Воістину Воскрес.
Сьогодні міністр горожанства і імміграції нам розкаже про цікаві і позитивні зміни в справах імміграції до Канади.
Вітаємо в студії сьогодні міністра горожанства і імміграції. Mr. Minister Jason Kenney, welcome to our show. Welcome to Toronto.
Добрий день, Yuri. Good to be here.
Добрий день. Most of us are very familiar with your work in the field of multiculturalism, but a little less in the field of immigration and citizenship. Would you please tell us a little bit about what your expectations were and what you were thinking or planning to achieve and when you were appointed minister?
Well, that's a good job. I have to admit, Yuri, that I never wanted the job because it's a very tough one. And I saw many other ministers struggle with it because you're dealing with the hopes and dreams of so many people who want to come to the country. Not everyone can, and it can sometimes be very difficult. But I have to say, my expectations have been proven me wrong because, in fact, I've enjoyed the responsibility enormously. It's an opportunity to have a positive impact on the lives of hundreds of thousands of people, to actually deal with real human issues. And it's the ministry that's about building Canada. It's the nation-building ministry. Immigration has been central to our history, to our prosperity, and to be able to welcome newcomers to this country is a great opportunity. So I must say I'm enjoying it a great deal. It also keeps me in constant contact with the diversity of our cultural communities. You know, I've been very close to the Ukrainian community in particular. In point of fact, the very first foreign country I visited as Minister of Immigration in November of 2008 was Ukraine. I went to Kiev for the 75th anniversary commemorations of Holodomor. Met with former President Yushchenko and senior ministers of the government, and it was a deeply moving visit to represent Canada at those ceremonies.
Now, since you've become minister, what do you feel are your major accomplishments, having been in this ministry now for approximately a year and a half? And then maybe we can get into also about visa requirements for Ukraine,
sure.
Transit, and so forth.
Well, let me say that we've had some significant achievements for newcomers to improve their lives in Canada. The first thing that we did was to triple the funding for settlement programs like free language classes for newcomers. The Liberals had frozen that for 13 years. We've now increased by 3 times the investment in language training and other services to help newcomers when they arrive in Canada. We've also made major improvements to the skilled worker program that most people immigrate to Canada under. That's that point system. Under the Liberals, it was taking 5 or 6 years to get an answer on an application to immigrate to Canada as a skilled worker. Now we've got that down to a few months, 6 or 8 months under our action plan for faster immigration. And we've also brought in a new category for people to become permanent residents from within Canada. If they've got a degree if they're foreign students from Ukraine or elsewhere, come and study at a Canadian university or college, they can now become permanent residents from within Canada, as can highly skilled temporary foreign workers. And we have a lot of Ukrainians coming, working in things like heavy equipment operators and machinery and in the oil sands, in pipelines. They're now able to become permanent residents from within Canada without having to leave.
What about the issue of foreign credentials that you were able to mitigate organizing all of the provinces, specifically in relation to professions of health and engineering, where people were coming from other countries and winding up here in Canada and not being able to work professionally?
As you know, for too long we've been welcoming highly trained professionals from around the world who often come here and then they don't get their credentials recognized by these professional agencies. So you end up with the doctors driving taxi cabs and the engineers working in corner stores. And I've met some of these highly educated people from Ukraine as well who have been underemployed in Canada because the licensing bodies wouldn't recognize their skills from Ukraine or elsewhere. The Prime Minister Harper got all 10 premiers around the table early last year and said, folks, we have to solve this problem. It's a waste of talent. It's a huge opportunity cost for the Canadian economy to have all these highly skilled professionals underemployed in Canada. And so the premiers agreed to come up with a common, streamlined, coordinated Canadian approach to the recognition of foreign professionals' credentials. And we've put $50 million, like we're not just talking the talk, we're walking it with a real investment, $50 million to develop a policy with all of the licensing bodies for the different professions and the 10 provincial governments, so that we are going to start giving people an answer on their application within a year of making it. No longer should people have to wait 5 or 6 years just to get a no. If they're not up to the Canadian standard, they should know that soon so they can backfill their education and take another run at it and get their credentials recognized and make a contribution to the Canadian economy. So it's not a thing we're going to solve overnight, but we're finally making some real progress on that thanks to political leadership from the Prime Minister.
Now, what about easing visa requirements from Ukraine? I know that's a rocky road, but what are the impediments to having free travel between Ukraine and Canada?
Well, first of all, the good news is that we're making progress on that front. In Canada, our policy has always been under different governments that we won't consider waiving the visa requirement for a country until the rejection rate for visa applications is under 4% for a sustained period of time. The rejection rate for Ukrainian visitor visas used to be over 15%. It's been going down and down and down. It's now around 8%, going down further. So I'm very optimistic that in the medium-term future, that the Ukrainian situation will allow us to seriously consider a visa exemption, but we're not there yet. And I've got to flag a concern. Last year, or 2 years ago, we provided visa exemptions for a bunch of Central European countries that are members of the European Union, and we had to reimpose the visa on Czech Republic because of a huge wave of asylum, of refugee claimants that were largely false refugee claimants. Last year we got 2,500 asylum claimants from Hungary. We're getting hundreds a month now, and 0% are being accepted as legitimate refugees. Most of them are withdrawing their claims, and there's a front page story now in the Hamilton Spectator about how these people are coming and gaming the Canadian welfare system. So I'm not saying anything about Ukraine, but until we've fixed our refugee system, I won't be in a position to really go forward with any visa exemptions for additional countries at this point. But I want visa-free travel between Canada and Ukraine, but we need to be prudent, first of all, and not put ourselves in a position where we grant the visa exemption and then have to take it back like we did with Czech Republic. That hurt the relationship. So we're moving in the right direction. I just ask people to be patient.